Anyone who has had Jeff Toothaker for a court-appointed attorney has a valid bar complaint for ineffective counsel at the very least. It is advised to document all encounters with lawyers like Jeff Toothaker. They are masters of manipulation. In today's world, documenting the encounters with lawyers that are this crooked is priceless. It is recommended to use your cell phone, camera glasses, a body cam, email, letters, or any other way that you can document the encounter with lawyers. If you have him for a court-appointed lawyer, watch out for the following violations. Failure to keep the client informed. All attorneys are expected to regularly update the clients on the status of their cases, especially if they're sitting in jail, including developments, court dates, and any communication with opposing parties. Opposing parties means the district attorney's office. Jeff is unlikely to tell you about any of this communication with them. Delayed or non-responsive communication. If the attorney consistently delays responding to clients' inquiries or fails to respond at all, which Jeff is famous for, it can be a violation of the duty to communicate promptly and effectively. Failure to explain the legal process. Attorneys should ensure that clients understand the legal process involved in their case. In Hancock County, they intentionally cover up this type of things. Failure to explain court procedures, potential outcomes, and legal strategies can be considered inadequate communication. Not providing copies of important documents. This is another favorite trick of this court. If the attorney does not provide the client with copies of essential legal documents or fails to explain the contents of those documents, it can hinder the client's understanding of their case. Ignoring client preferences. Disregarding the client's preferences regarding the handling of their case without proper explanation or consent may be considered lack of communication. Failure to seek client input. All attorneys should seek the client's input on important decisions affecting their case. Failure to consult with the client on significant matters may be viewed as inadequate communication. Not informing about rights and options. Failing to inform the client about their legal rights, available options, and potential consequences can be a violation of the attorney's duty to provide competent and complete advice. Jeff violates this all the time. Lack of transparency regarding fees. If the attorney does not communicate with their fee structure, billing practices, or financial aspects of the representation, it can be a violation of ethical standards. Lack of legal knowledge. Attorneys like Jeff Toothaker lacks a fundamental understanding of relevant laws and legal procedures pertaining to the case. It may be considered incompetence. Failure to investigate. A court-appointed attorney is expected to conduct a thorough investigation into the facts of the case. With Jeff Toothaker, this does not exist. Failure to gather necessary evidence or interview key witnesses can be a sign of inadequate preparation. Misapplication of law. Applying the law incorrectly or misunderstanding legal principles relevant to the case can indicate incompetence or case strategy. If attorneys like Jeff Toothaker fails to develop a clear, effective strategy for the case, including presenting relative arguments and evidence, it may be considered inadequate preparation. Failure to challenge evidence. If the evidence is flawed or improperly obtained evidence, the attorney is expected to challenge it. Failure to do so could be a sign of incompetence. Inadequate courtroom skills. Attorneys like Jeff Toothaker should possess basic courtroom skills, including the ability to present arguments persuasively, cross-examine witnesses effectively, and respond to objections. Lack of these skills may be considered incompetence. Failure to consult with experts. In cases requiring specialized knowledge, an attorney may need to consult with experts. Failure to do so when necessary can be a sign of incompetence. Ignoring client's instructions. If the attorney disregards a client's reasonable instructions without valid legal reasons, it is considered a failure of preparation of the case. Dual representation without informed consent. Representing two clients with conflicting interests without obtaining informed consent from both clients is a clear violation. This situation can compromise the attorney's ability to provide zealous and unbiased representation. Personal relationships with opposing parties. Jeff is famous for this. If the court-appointed attorney has a personal relationship with individuals involved in the case, such as opposing counsel, witnesses, or the judge, that could compromise their ability to act in the best interest of their client. Financial interest. Having a financial interest in the outcome of the case conflicts with the interest of the client. Having financial interest in the outcome of the case that conflicts with the interest of the client is a significant violation. Attorneys should not put their own financial gain ahead of their client's best interest. Familial relationships. Representing a family member or close friend in a case can create a significant conflict of interest, as the attorney may be emotionally or financially invested in the outcome. Previous representation of opposing party. If the court-appointed attorney previously represented a party with interest adverse to the current client, it could lead to a conflict of interest unless the attorney can demonstrate that the current representation will not adversely be affected. Competing professional obligations. Attorneys may have obligations to other clients or third parties that conflict with their duty to the court-appointed client. Balancing these obligations without proper consideration are ethical violations. Failure to disclose conflicts. Attorneys are obligated to disclose potential conflicts of their interest to their clients. Failure to do so deprives clients of the opportunity to make informed decisions about their representation. Using client information for personal gain. Misusing confidential information obtained from a client for personal gain or benefit of another client is a serious violation of ethical standards. Inadequate screening for conflicts. Failure to implement proper screening procedures to identify and address potential conflicts of interest before accepting a case can lead to ethical violations. With Jeff Toothaker, this is no concern whatsoever. Failure to withdraw when a conflict arises. If a conflict of interest arises during the course of representation and the attorney fails to withdraw promptly, it is considered a violation of professional responsibility. Ineffective assistance of counsel. Jeff is famous for this. Failing to provide competent legal representation, including the failure to investigate, present a proper defense, or challenge evidence adequately. Neglect of duty. Failing to be vigilant representing the client's interest, such as missing court dates, hearings, or not filing necessary motions. Failure to challenge evidence. Not scrutinizing or objecting to potentially flawed or improperly obtained evidence, compromising the client's defense. Lack of zealous advocacy. Not displaying the necessary zeal in representing the client's case, which is a fundamental duty of an attorney. Collaboration with the prosecution. Jeff is famous for this. This happens on every trial in Hancock County. Allowing collaboration with the prosecution, potentially leading to conflicts of interest and compromised defense strategies. Jeff has no defense strategy, so see, this is not even a concern. Professional misconduct. Engaging in conduct that violates ethical standards, such as dishonesty, conflict of interest, or failure to preserve client confidences. Jeff is famous for this. Inadequate case preparation. Jeff continuously fails to thoroughly prepare for any cases by conducting proper legal research, gathering evidence, and understanding key facts to undermine effective advocacy. Failure to prevent a defense strategy. Jeff is also famous for this. A court-appointed attorney should develop and articulate a clear defense strategy. Failing to do so may result in the lack of direction during legal proceedings. Neglecting to challenge evidence. If there is a flawed or improperly obtained evidence, the attorney is expected to challenge it. Jeff never does this. Neglecting to question or object to such evidence may be considered a failure to advocate. Poor courtroom performance. Again, Jeff is famous for this. Ineffective presentation of arguments. You don't give any arguments, he just sits there and says nothing. Difficulty in cross-examining witnesses or failure to respond to objections in court can signify a lack of skills. Failure to communicate persuasively. Advocacy involves representing arguments in a clear, logical, and persuasive manner. If an attorney fails to communicate effectively, it can undermine the client's case. Lack of zealous representation. Attorneys are obligated to provide zealous representation for their clients. A failure to actively and passionately advocate on behalf of the client's interest may be considered a violation. Failure to object to legal errors. If there are legal errors or misapplications of law during proceedings, the attorney is expected to object and bring such issues to the court's attention. Failure to do so may harm the client's case. Failure to present mitigating factors. In situations where there are factors that can mitigate the severity of the client's situation, the attorney should present such factors in a compelling manner. This here is one of the most common misconduct by all main courts is the Brady Violation. Ignoring clients' wishes. Court advocacy includes considering the client's preferences and goals for the case. Ignoring the client's reasonable instructions without proper legal justification can be a violation. Jeff does this all the time. All of the court-appointed attorneys in Hancock County do that. Every single one of them. Ineffective negotiation skills. If the case involves negotiations, the attorney should possess effective negotiation skills to secure favorable outcomes for the client. Inadequate negotiation can be considered a failure to advocate. Failure to preserve legal issues for appeal. If the issues are not properly preserved for appeal, it may be a failure to advocate for the client's long-term interest. Breach of attorney-client confidentiality. Jeff does this nearly on a routine basis. He doesn't care about any of the confidentiality. He shares things with everybody. Breach of attorney-client confidentiality. Sharing confidential information about the client's case without proper authorization can be a significant ethical violation. Dishonesty or fraud. Engaging in dishonest or fraudulent behavior such as falsifying evidence, making false statements to the court, or providing misleading information is a serious ethical violation. Misuse of client funds. Misappropriating clients' funds for personal use or using them inappropriately without the client's consent is a violation of ethical standards. Failure to communicate. Failing to keep the client informed about the status of their case, not responding to client inquiries, or withholding important information may constitute an ethical violation. Violation of duty of competence. Attorneys have a duty to provide competent representation. With Jeff, you're liable to get nothing. Lack of legal knowledge, inadequate preparation, or failure to stay informed about changes in the law may constitute an ethical violation. Failure to follow client instructions. Ignoring the client's reasonable instructions without proper legal justification can be an ethical breach. Failure to safeguard client property. Attorneys are responsible for safeguarding client property, including evidence and documents. Failure to do so can be an ethical violation. Failure to withdraw when necessary. If a conflict of interest arises or the attorney becomes aware of circumstances that prevent them from providing competent representation, they have an ethical duty to withdraw from the case. Failure to maintain professionalism. Engaging in unprofessional behavior, including disrespectful conduct towards clients, opposing counsel, or the court, can be considered an ethical violation. Failure to adequately supervise staff. Attorneys are responsible for the actions of their staff. Failure to supervise staff members leading to ethical breaches may reflect on the attorney's own ethical responsibilities. Missed deadlines. Failure to meet important deadlines such as filing motions, submitting evidence, or meeting court-imposed schedules is a form of negligence. Failure to conduct timely investigations. Neglecting to conduct a thorough and timely investigation into the facts of the case can compromise the client's defense. Jeff is famous for this. You don't do anything. Lack of communication regarding court dates. Failing to inform clients about upcoming court dates or hearings leading to the client's absence in the court is a negligent act. Failure to file necessary documents. Neglecting to file essential legal documents or submitting them after the deadline can harm the client's case. Lack of preparation for hearings and trial. Once again, Jeff is famous for this. Inadequate preparation for court appearances, such as being unprepared for hearings or trials, may be considered negligent. Failure to advise on plea deals. If a plea deal is available and beneficial to the client, the attorney's failure to advise the client on this option may be considered negligence. Failure to update address and contact information. If the attorney does not maintain accurate contact information for the client, it can result in miscommunications and opportunities to discuss the case. Failure to obtain necessary expert witnesses. In cases requiring expert testimony, the failure to secure and present qualified expert witnesses may be considered negligent. Failure to communicate settlement offers. If the attorney neglects to inform the client about settlement offers or fails to adequately explain the potential benefits or drawbacks, it can be considered negligent representation. Ignoring applicable legal precedents. Neglecting to research and apply relevant legal precedents that could benefit the client's case may be considered negligent. Failure to object to evidentiary issues. If there are issues with admission of evidence, the attorney fails to object, it may be considered negligent. Failure to interview key witnesses. Neglecting to interview witnesses who could provide crucial information for the case may be considered inadequate investigation. Failure to visit crime scene. If applicable, not visiting the crime scene to gather first-hand information or failing to secure relevant evidence from the scene can be viewed as inadequate investigation. Insufficient document review. Failing to thoroughly review documents such as police reports, medical records, or other relevant materials can result in overlooking crucial details. Inadequate examination of physical evidence. Not properly examining or challenging physical evidence presented by the prosecution may be considered a failure to investigate in the investigative process. Not properly examining or challenging physical evidence presented by the prosecution may be considered a failure in the investigative process. Lack of expert consultation. In cases requiring specialized knowledge, the failure to consult with experts, such as forensic specialists or medical professionals, can lead to inadequacies in the investigation. Failure to review surveillance footage. In cases where surveillance footage is available, not reviewing or analyzing the footage thoroughly may be viewed as inadequate investigation. Ignoring alibi evidence. Failing to investigate and present alibi evidence that could support the client's innocence is a significant lapse in the investigative process. Failure to explore mitigating factors. Neglecting to investigate and present mitigating factors that could influence sentencing or reduce the severity of the charges may be considered inadequate. Jeff's favorite trick is to try to get you more time than what the district attorney is asking for. Failure to subpoena necessary documents. Not utilizing legal tools such as subpoenas to obtain necessary documents that could benefit the defense may be viewed as inadequate investigation. Lack of communication with the client. If the attorney fails to communicate with the client about the progress of the investigation or does not seek the client's input, it may indicate inadequate investigation. Failure to challenge the prosecution's evidence. Challenging the validity or reliability of the prosecution's evidence during legal proceedings can be a sign of inadequate investigation. Failure to investigate legal defenses. Not exploring potential legal defenses or failing to present them effectively in court may be considered inadequate investigation. So for those of you who have had Jeff Toothaker as a court-appointed lawyer, how many of those violations did you spot? Like I mentioned before, everyone that's had Jeff Toothaker for a court-appointed lawyer has a valid bar complaint for several violations.